My dad tells stories of a terrible war that happened across the sky. Heroes fought and died to give us a chance to start over.
She makes it sound so majestic, but we all know it actually looks something like this. Dude, seriously? Oh my god. Yeah, let's try that again. Unless you've been living under a rock, or you're not part of the ARK community, if so, welcome. You know that Studio Wildcard is about to release their second installment of the ARK series called ARK Survival Ascended. This is the Unreal 5 remaster of the first game, ARK Survival Evolved, that's set to release at the end of this month. There's very little reliable information out there, so I've spent a lot of time reading all the community crunches, watching lots of videos, and reading many articles to compile all the information we have about ARK Survival Ascended 1 month before its release into one video. This is going to be an all-inclusive video, and we're going to cover everything from content drops, logistics, what it means to be on Unreal 5 versus Unreal 4, release date, timelines, price points, and anything else you might want to know about ARK Survival Ascended. There's going to be timestamps in the video player, so feel free to skip around to find information that you may want to know. Otherwise, let's get into it. Okay, so to begin, we're going to be going over the most important things that I found in all the community crunches. First is a direct quote from Studio Wildcard. ARK Survival Ascended, otherwise known as ASA, is a next-generation remake of our beloved ARK Survival Evolved, harnessing the power of Unreal 5 engine. ASA is launching at the end of October for the price point of $39.99 US. It is a completely crossplay title. This means it will be playable between the platforms of PC, Xbox Series X/S, and PlayStation 5. According to Wildcard, ARK Survival Ascended, from a creative standpoint, is almost an identical game to ARK Survival Evolved. From a technical standpoint, they're just bringing it up to the 2023 industry standards. They said the game was really limited by being made in 2015, and when they made it, it was really poorly optimized because the studio was much smaller. Using the resources that they've gained over the years, they're able to turn ARK Survival Evolved into the AAA title that it truly is. Alright, so here's the image that's been floating around on the internet. This is from Wildcard themselves, but it does say use generated content and mod programs. I don't expect the game to look like this, but here's an idea of what things will look like on the Unreal 5 engine. Here's some footage from a demo game on the Unreal 5 showcase ran on a PlayStation 5. If you want to check this video out for yourself, the link is in the description. I'll also put a card in the top right corner. Originally, the plan had been to showcase all the intricacies and upgrades from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, but I did a lot of research and came to the conclusion that that's way too much to pack into one video, and we do want to keep the topic focused on ARK Survival Ascended, so instead we're going to move on to the next section. But if you do want to learn more about it, I'll leave a link in the description to all the resources that I used to learn about Unreal 5 if you want to learn more for yourself. Let's move on. In this next section, we're going to be looking at the 5 creatures that we know about that were not in ARK Survival Evolved that will be in ARK Survival Ascended. There are 11 in total, but so far we only know about 5. These 5 have been voted on by you and the rest of the community. These creatures will not all release at the same time. Instead, they will come out with their respective maps. We'll be going over the release timeline later. So far, we only know about 5 of them, but there are 11 in total. We have their dossiers pulled up. I'm going to be going over all of them, and we are going to read the dossiers, get all the information that we know, and speculate what their use could be in a PvP or PvE scenario. The first creature is the Dreadnoughtous. The Dreadnoughtous is a Titan-class creature that is going to release with extinction. Starting with the wild section of the dossier, Dreadnoughtous Maximus is the undisputed emperor of the wasteland, towering over everything except for the very Titanis themselves. From this section of the dossier, we can infer that the Dreadnoughtous is going to be another raid dino similar to the Titanosaur. This is something that can be used to power through land bases and soak lots of turrets at once. I have a feeling that this one is going to see a lot more action than the Titanosaur did in ARK Survival Evolved. We're not going to get too in depth into this because this comes up in a later section. Wildcard is making a big push to change the meta from caves back onto land. The next section of the dossier is this bottom left section that reads, "While they pay no mind to those beneath them, they are incredibly hostile towards other large creatures, including other Dreadnoughtous. The adrenaline coursing through their veins in the presence of a potential threat increases their physical strength and pain resistance to an astonishing degree. To handle creatures with ties to element, It has developed the ability to absorb kinetic energy of their attacks and convert it into an elemental pulse that weakens corruption and even disables tech for a short period of time. This next section reads, Domesticated. When they aren't harassing other creatures, Dreadnoughtous engage in a series of daily rituals, the order of which depends on the individual. If a survivor manages to assist them with even the most minute of tasks, they may gain their trust. A Dreadnoughtous is an utter war beast when tamed. It can be fitted with a special saddle, allowing for the attachment of up to 7 heavy artillery weapons, along with a harpoon located on the chest designed to pierce into and reel opponents. The dinosaur itself can be a living weapon, regurgitating acid-covered cannonballs stored in its stomach at high velocity. However, I have a word of caution for any who plan on taming one of these giants. If their needs are neglected by their masters, it will eventually throw a cataclysmic temper tantrum. Okay, so we actually get a lot of information out of this one dossier. One of the most important pieces of information is in the bottom left paragraph, where it makes note of creatures with ties to Element. This confirms that Element and Tech is making a return in ARK Survival Ascended. This isn't a surprise because ARK Survival Ascended is a remaster, not a remake. Although this is contradictory to some of the other notes from the community crunches that we're going to read, such as no cryopods and cave nerves, and the servers beginning with primitive items and the island only. The other important bit of information that we get from this is in the top right paragraph, where it makes mention of the cataclysmic temper tantrum. This suggests that they are going to be doing away with the raid dino concept. The raid dino concept was the idea where creatures like the Titanosaur, Forest Titan, Desert Titan would have a food meter that you could not refill, and once it was gone, the creature would start to lose health until it eventually died. This was to stop tribes from having these powerful creatures for extended periods of time, but it looks like here with the Dreadnoughtous, we might be able to keep these creatures forever. It also has a lot of special abilities, and it makes note of siege weapons. Siege weapons were kind of bad in ARK 1, although cannons did have some pretty cool uses. I guess it is cool that siege weapons are getting a second look in ARK Survival Ascended, since they were pretty useless in ARK Survival Evolved, although I'm unsure of what drove them to make this decision, because they're trying to push players back out onto land and destroy the cave meta that ruled ARK Survival Evolved for the last 5 years. But having a creature like this that's so dominant on land would really incentivize players to move back into caves. Regardless, I'm pretty excited to see how this creature plays out. I also think it's pretty cool that they're trying to give creatures more uses besides the regular harvest and attack abilities. This is all the information we have about the Dreadnoughtous so far. Let's move on. So the next dino that we're going to be looking at is the Fasolasuchus. This is going to be releasing with the Scorched Earth DLC. Starting with the dossier up here in the top left corner where it says Wild, it reads, This wasteland is full of surprises and not exactly the good kind. There's something out here that looks like Fasolasuchus if those proto-crocs could swim through sand like water. These beasts might pop up suddenly to ambush you or swim around you fast enough to catch you in a sand whirlpool. I can't stress enough how dangerous this death trap can be. Plus their tails are strong enough to whip up sand to blind predators and prey alike. If you can help it, I recommend staying clear of those spikes. I think they've got acid glands at the base of their spiny fins, and in their mouths as well. Their caustic bite seems to melt through the thickest hide. In the domesticated section, it reads, Domesticated. One of these monster sand swimmers would make a great mount, but good luck slowing down something that can shrug off most narcotics. You could try softening one up with explosives, grabbing a spike and steering it into a rock, but you'd have to be a bit mental to try that. I imagine the adrenaline junkies able to tame a Fasolasuchus would earn themselves a formidable ride through these scorching sands. They seem to have adapted to fighting larger prey, so I advise any faster rider to steer clear of packs of smaller creatures that can swarm over its defenses. Okay, so I actually think there's a lot of cool things that you get from this dossier. The first thing is the taming method. It says shoot with explosives, grabbing a spike and steering it into a rock. We're likely going to have to shoot it with the rocket launcher and then mount it and fill its taming meter similar to the Karchar tame. The other thing is that it's referred to as a sand shark in the dossier, so we're likely going to be able to travel very fast under the Dune Sea. I can think of a couple cool applications for PvP. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to be shot by turrets while you're traversing under the map. I'm also not sure how you're going to be affected by sandstorms. There also might be some other characteristics that's not mentioned in the dossier, but that's not usually how wildcard rolls, so we can assume that this is all the features of the dinosaur. I'm also noticing that wildcard is really liking the idea of acid attacks, similar to the Titanoboa or Poison Wyvern. I'm not really sure why Studio Wildcard is choosing to have this feature implemented on both of their new dinos, one of them being a sauropod and one of them being a large reptile. It doesn't really make sense that either of them have a large acid attack. Other than this, the only bit of information that I was able to find on this dinosaur is that it will wander even when it's not set to enable wandering, so we're probably going to have to use the dino leash to keep it stable, or cryopod it when that comes out. Other than that, this is all the information that we have on the Fasolasuchus that we'll be releasing with the Scorched Earth DLC later in the year or in 2024. The next dino that we have on our list is the Yi-Ling, otherwise just known as the Yi. This is kind of an interesting choice that Wildcard decided to release this one, even as part of the community vote, because after reading the dossier, I don't really see a use for this because it seems like a worse version of the rock drake. But let's read the dossier and you guys can make an informed decision for yourself whether you like it or not. On the top left, it says, wild. This feathered fella is so much bigger than the Yi species I was aware of in my day. Despite its aberrant size, Yi-Ling is still somehow light enough to cling to walls, and it can even glide short distances. Moving on to the bottom, it reads, I'm glad Yi seems to prefer prey smaller than itself, because it can eject a spray of bark feathers before darting in to rip them from an unhappy target. This unique attack may expose Yi in the short term, but its protective plumage regrows fast. The right page reads, domesticated. Tamed Yi makes for an excellent, if precarious, hunting mount. Some tribes use them as caravan scouts, others to torment enemy forces. I've seen Yi scare up the weird mushrooms, congealed gas balls, and nameless creatures scurrying around down there. Who knows what an effect like that would have on a feathery weaponry. Watch out what your Yi eats, and you just might learn to sharpen its fighting skills. Okay, so I think we get some cool information from this one, but I'm not really sure about the uses of this dino. It sounds like it's going to be an early game green zone mount that you can use to move around Aberration. I'm not sure if they're planning on bringing LDL back, but Aberration never worked as an LDL. They didn't even try to implement it because Aberration is so dependent on other creatures like the Maywing and the Bloodstalker. So maybe the Yi-Ling will allow us to move around the green zone and blue zone and advance without struggling so much. Otherwise, it looks like they're trying to implement a system of short-term upgrades on your dinos through its diet. This is pretty cool that they're trying to make the diet more of an interactive feature other than just spamming raw meat to feed or tame. But other than this, I don't really see a use for the dino. On the top right, it says Caravan Scouts. I'm not sure if this means that 2 people are going to be able to ride it at once, or it's suggesting that these dinos travel in packs. It also says Torment Enemy Forces. I'm not sure if this is just a lore-based line, or we're actually going to have a way to torture other players. Regardless, this creature does seem like a cool addition to Aberration, but I don't really see myself using it, especially in a PvP scenario. This next creature is less interesting in my opinion. It's called the Gigantoraptor, and it's going to be releasing with the Ragnarok DLC. The wild part of this dossier reads, unless you're planning to raid its nest, you shouldn't let this creature's imposing size worry you. Gigantoraptor may be fiercely protective of its brood, but it's much more of a caregiver than a fighter. Don't get me wrong, this theropod will use its sharp claws and surprising speed to defend its young when threatened, but Gigantoraptor has a soft heart for young ones. It'll even take in the orphaned babies of rival species. Domesticated. Now for the bad news. To my knowledge, no one's been able to figure out how to tame an adult Gigantoraptor. Its unique disposition seems resistant to behavioral conditioning. However, survivors bolder than me were able to sneak into its nest to win the trust of their young, and they claim that reward is well worth the risk. Once matured to adulthood, your tamed Gigantoraptor will happily look after any of your tribe's young creatures, nurturing them and teaching them how to fight. It can even use its call to help you find orphan baby animals out in the wild. If you bring those orphans home, then your Gigantoraptor will happily add them to its brood. Gigantoraptor forms an inseparable bond with its young. Bring them into a fight together, and they will defend each other and your tribe far more effectively than when apart. Okay, so the Gigantoraptor itself isn't the coolest thing in the world. To me, it kind of feels like a Maywing copy-paste without its PvP abilities, but the features that it utilizes to make itself useful are pretty cool. I really like the addition of babies throughout the world. It seems like we're going to have to use this thing to capture babies that we see in the wild that we want to tame and add to our bloodlines. It also looks like it's going to have a sort of imprint system between itself and dinos that are raised in its care. To me, it kind of feels like another version of the UD buff. Maybe it'll be useful in a PvP setting. Right now I'm picturing all the Rexes in the front and a Gigantoraptor behind just to get the added buff, like we've done with the pig and the UD in the past. Other than that, we have the taming method, which is steal an egg. Nothing new, we've done this with the Wyvern and other creatures before. Other than that, again, it's going to be releasing with the Ragnarok DLC later in the year or in 2024. We're not entirely sure yet. We have one more creature to go over, so let's move on. This one's pretty cool. This is the Shastasaurus, and I believe it's going to be releasing with the Center DLC, so we should see this one pretty soon. This is a Titan class creature. We've never had a rideable ocean Titan class creature before, other than the Colossal Squid. The lead sickness is the only fair comparison, although that one was pretty useless because all you could do is go and scrape meat off of it and it would just destroy your boats. The Shastasaurus, on the other hand, looks like it's going to be turned into some sort of submarine and have torpedoes, so it should be used for underwater raiding. Reading the dossier, starting up in the top left where it says wild. This odd variant of Shastasaurus seems as curious about humans as its distant relative Ichthyosaurus. It sure got my attention when one of these sea monsters swam up to me to take a look at me. Luckily, its bulk turns out to be worse than its bite. Shastasaurus has weaponized the ultrasonic chirps it uses for echolocation. It can focus those sounds into a tight cone to disorient prey, or widen the effect to blast apart schools of fish in a concussive wear. Getting a Shastasaurus was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I brought along some Ichthyosaurus packs to entertain their large cousin while I scraped off some of its itchy barnacles off with a sickle. From then on, I had a gigantic deep sea escort in the water. Some tribes were able to kid out their finny friend with a periscope, torpedo base, and even a cargo hold. Those Shastasaurus end up looking like something from the old kids cartoon with cavemen who turn dinos into cars and submarines. Okay, so this one's pretty cool because it does two things. Not only does it allow the first mobile underwater base, but it also confirms the existence of the Flintstones in the ARK universe. I'm not exactly sure how viable this is going to be in a PvP scenario. If this thing has a ton of health, then maybe we can justify putting all our stuff on a mobile base, but if people start getting good at the game, which they will, like they did in ARK Survival Evolved, then it's going to go one of two ways. Either this thing is going to be absolutely indestructible and every base will be underwater, or people will start using ESP again, and it's going to be so easy to find these things that people are never actually going to use them. Regardless, it's a really cool concept to have a submarine in ARK. This is definitely the right way to do it. I wouldn't have liked a tech submarine. I feel like that would have been too out of place in the game. The Shastasaurus is definitely a cool concept, and I'm glad they're expanding more on the ocean. I've always felt that the ocean in ARK was pretty bland and there wasn't really much to do. The creatures also weren't really viable because they didn't have any combat use outside. But if you can use this as a mobile fob, I can really see this being one of the coolest creatures in ASA. Okay everybody, so we made it through the first section about the creatures. We don't have any information on other creatures. The reason for this is because Studio Wildcard does not want to release all 11 creatures at once because they are unsure whether the addition of 11 creatures will break the PvP meta of the game. They also want to allow the player base to have experience with the game before they decide what kinds of creatures they want to be added for the rest of the 11 slots. Okay, so this next part of the video is pretty exciting in my opinion. This is the ARK Survival Ascended Q&A that was released with the last community crunch. Here we're only going to read through the key points and do some speculation. I'm going to leave my personal opinion out of it. We have a section for that at the end. But I do want to present all the facts to you guys so you can make an informed decision about whether you'd like to buy it or not when it comes out at the end of October. Again, went through some of these already, but we're going to read all of them just in case there's something you really want to know that I don't cover. First one reads, what is ASA? ARK Survival Ascended is a next generation remake of our beloved ARK Survival Evolved, harnessing the power of Unreal 5 engine. When is it launching? The launch is just around the corner. We'll reveal the launch trailer and screenshots and set the live near the end of October. Where can you play it? You'll be able to play ARK Survival Ascended on Xbox Series S/X, PlayStation 5, and PC, both on the Windows and Steam platforms. The next section, why are you doing it? I'm not going to read because that's a lot of words, and I think what they meant to say is that they're trying to maximize their profits. The next section reads, how are you leveraging the new technology? Another question that could pose quite a mouthful response, so we'll try to keep it simple. Here's what will be coming with ASA. ARK's codebase has been rewritten, and its artwork recreated by hand to take full advantage of Unreal 5. Advanced graphics features such as dynamic water, complete interactive physical foliage, and more systems to create a beautiful, immersive, next-generation experience. Cross-platform modding. We're working with Overwolf to provide an industry-first cross-platform modding experience, where mods created on PC are delivered directly to your consoles from a modding backend in an in-game user mod browser. The modding capability for creators includes using the full power of Unreal 5, including Blueprint, to create anything, any kind of new content or gameplay within ARK, and full cross-platform multiplayer. Okay, so there's actually a couple things to think about there that I think are pretty cool. The first one being mods on console. Consoles have been in a mod drought for a pretty long time, and I know it's a big deal in the PvE community. I actually got into ARK because of PvE mod videos, but eventually I just started playing only official PvP. But this is a pretty big deal. I'm glad that they're taking the step in this direction. The other thing that we have to look at in this bit is the full cross-platform multiplayer. We're not sure how this is going to pan out yet, but it is pretty cool. The way they did it on Xbox and Windows was that Xbox players had a set of servers set aside for themselves, but Windows players always had to play with other people on console just to keep it fair. It seems like the route that most developers are taking to keep it fair, while also allowing people to play with their friends who may be on other platforms. Regardless, this is definitely a step in the right direction. Moving on to the next section, it reads, quality of life improvements, balance, and gameplay changes, including but not limited to, over time we'll be releasing 11 brand new creatures, the new minimap system, new structures, and a major building system overhaul, new gameplay items, dynamic navigation and mesh, creature pathfinding overhaul, total UI revamp, photo mode, new camera systems for players and Dinos with the option to revert to the old systems, new player character assets with revamped and improved customization, gamepad virtual cursor UI input system, new Dino manager system, and much more. A key thing to remember is that ARK Survival Ascended will include all its previously released DLCs and maps in its remastered form and will have its own content roadmap. This will include new story content for the game, its own gameplay, quality of life changes, new DLC, seasonal events, and more. Okay, so there's some pretty cool things in this section as well. I have some images for you guys also. So the first thing is the 11 new creatures. We went over this already. The new minimap system kind of feels similar to the Rust minimap system where you can interact with the world and see things happening in real time. Not really sure if this is going to tie into any live events or things happening like OSDs, but it is pretty cool that we're going to get more than just the little paper map that we have carrying on us. These structures, I have a picture of them here on screen. There was kind of a joke in the community because wildcard was gatekeeping just about everything that had to do with this game, and all they were doing as far as content drops went was releasing a new picture of an item that looked exactly the same as the old item once a month in the community crunch. Overall, I'm pretty excited for some of the changes that they're bringing to the game. I'm most excited for the removal of the maps. I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive because we're looking at a new content release, but if you guys played ARK back when it was only the island, then you know how fun it is to have the entire population on one server. This next section I'm going to try to power through because it's not as substantive as the other ones. The first part says there will be no pre-order, everyone will get the game at the same time. The second section says crossplay will not be available at launch, they're going to wait to figure that out. The third section says that they have a 3-phase plan to launch the game. Phase 1 is October. They say that they're going to have to patch the game a lot during this time. It's because they don't know if it's going to work properly when it comes out, but we knew that already. The second stage is December when they're planning to release crossplay. This is an ETA, this is not confirmed. And the third stage is cross progression. They say that they're not going to be able to release cross progression until 2024 because of some issues with Epic Games. They also say that they're not sure how this is going to work for existing accounts, which is why they're giving themselves a year to figure it out. This next section that's right below it reads, what changes have been made to the servers? So we've made a few changes to the servers. First of all, we've increased stasis replication range for structures and dinos by about 70%. This means you'll be able to see them from farther away. Additionally, we'll be making use of instance rendering for all our structure tile sets, meaning bases are going to run a lot better. At the moment, we're still keeping the servers capped at 70 players. With a lot of other changes we've made, we've had to make some trade-offs, and right now the tech isn't quite there to increase the slot cap much higher. We'll be evaluating over time whether we can increase it as further engine upgrades come through. Of course, player-run unofficial servers can increase to 100 players, and that is highly viable if they reduce the stasis replication range or lower the maximum dino counts. Question: what content changes have been made for day 1? Caves, rafts, cryopod, tech, giant squirrels? This is a hot topic, and we wanted to clarify our intentions, but we wouldn't be surprised if some things have slipped through the cracks. Generally, we intend to release content based on the map that it launched with. It doesn't matter when it launched. For example, the rafts will be available on day 1 and the Rhinognatha on the island. However, tech creature variants and cryopods will not be available. We have done a pass on caves with balance adjustments to choke points and improved the cave's internal appearance. We were hesitant to make dramatic changes to cave's balance as, while meta in ARK Survival Evolved had flaws, we didn't feel a complete overhaul was wise. Between these changes and other adjustments throughout the game, we expect to see some shifts in the meta players create. We plan to monitor the impact of moving parts in the hands of thousands of players and pivot as needed post-launch. Honestly, there are a fair number of changes on the gameplay side, being overhauled building, disabled leveling of movement speed on creatures and players on the unofficial network. We see the conversations, we already did it a while back, small dino quality of life, breeding changes. This one sounds scary, we know, Our product and Q&A teams were freaking out about it, but generally our intention hasn't been to change the strength of creatures, but to make the implementation cleaner. Previously, mutations were based on a creature's wild stat multiplier. This had led to some creatures receiving buffs/nerfs and particular stats, but we intend to rebalance this over time as we evaluate their roles in the meta. We want your feedback on that. We have not fixed more than 20 mutations. We have removed the 255 cap so that servers can specify. We'll leave it as it is on our official servers, 255, but it's open to adjustments. Of course, these examples only cover some of what you can expect to be redesigned in ARK Survival Ascended. We could wax lyrical about the environment, water, sky, and how adorable wild babies are, but we'll let the game speak itself 1,000 words really soon. Okay, so there's a lot of cool technical stuff in this section, but I think the thing that we all care about is that they're doing away with cryopods and movement speed. Now, in my personal opinion, Cryopods is a positive change to the game. It really did help solos, and it also incentivized raiding a lot more. There was actually not a lot of point to raiding other than the fact that you wanted to get rid of people before there were cryopods, but cryopods actually changed the incentive of raiding from loot to time. You couldn't get dinos yourself if you were a normal person, had a normal job, went to school. There were other people who had to spend hours and hours of their life just breeding and breeding. So what you could do is raid, get their breeding lines, and add it into your own breeding lines. Without cryopods, I don't really know if that's going to be possible, especially if they don't add a way to steal each other's dinos. The unclaimed dino thing, where dinos are claimable after 7 days, never really happened. So I don't know how the game's going to be without cryopods, but I'm definitely excited to have the game move back onto land. I have a clip that I'm going to show you guys in a second, but first, let's talk about movement speed. I actually think that the movement speed going away is a positive change. We aren't going to be able to rocket run turrets anymore, but it was kind of ridiculous in my opinion how fast players were able to move. The club and movement speed days are over, so you don't have to worry about people running up, knocking you out in one hit, and then dragging you into a cage anymore. They did away with flyer movement speed a long time ago, and no one really leveled movement speed on any other creatures anyways, so I don't think that matters. This is all speculation anyways, so I don't know if I'm going to feel any different when the game releases, but regardless, I do think these are positive changes for the game, but we'll see at the end of this month when it comes out. So this is a little short story that I think you guys can appreciate. This was recorded all the way back in 2017 on my Xbox, and this is how we used to do raids before there were cryopods. Now we have FOVs and tech shields and all these things, but before you actually used to walk things everywhere. So these guys, I guess their tribe name was Eclipse Agent, killed my Rex while I was taming it. So then me and my boys went to go raid their base, but there's no C4 and there's no rockets, and all we have are little siege weapons. We also had to walk all our creatures over there, so this is how we took them off the map. Okay, so I'm not saying that's what it's going to be like, because people are definitely better at the game now than they were when that video was recorded, but it's just an idea of what raiding was like in the game before all this futuristic stuff was added. I think it was pretty cool, and also half the fun of the game before used to be figuring things out for yourself. Now people are so good at min-maxing, optimizing production, and finding the different cheats and ways to get their resources. Overall, I think the island's going to be a pretty positive experience when ARK Survival Ascended drops. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to relearn and fall in love with the game again like we did all those years ago. We can't stay on this topic forever because there's a lot more stuff to cover, but I hope you guys enjoyed that clip as much as I did. Okay, so last little section here. Character creation overhaul. It was paramount to our art team that we overhauled the character creation system for ASA so the characters look less survival jank, and we successfully did that. But then we decided to say screw it and allow you to mess with all the bones and scalers anyway. So yeah, you can make something that feels nice and polished, or you could choose to make a character of questionable proportions that looks like it belongs to ARK Survival Evolved, but next gen. Is there Gareth Coker music? Sorry, in main menu, can't hear you over the new Gareth Coker music. DLSS, RTX-DI, and Fragment. We're working pretty close with NVIDIA on all the things. They're actually in our game code themselves, doing all the things. You can read more about these systems on their site. I'll put this link in the description if you guys want to check this out for yourself. Unreal 5.2, why not 5.3? UE5 is a relatively recent release, and we've been keeping up with all the changes that Epic is working on. It's too soon for us to integrate it thoroughly. Quite frankly, quite risky so close to launch. For now, we've decided to cherry pick some of the things from 5.3 that we really like, and over time, we'll continue to upgrade the entire engine to 5.3 and beyond. Gameplay when? You will 100% be able to see the game via trailer screenshots before you purchase the game in October. Not getting any more specific than that. Okay, so this next one might be the most important one. This is probably going to be make or break as far as the success of the game goes. Wildcard definitely needs to hit a home run with their anti-cheat system. This is what they have to say about it. We will be working with an anti-cheat for ASA. We won't be sharing any more information about anti-cheat as it doesn't benefit anyone to do so, and never mind, they have nothing to say about it, and we are still going to be getting about it. Okay, next is the survival of the fittest. We're going back to the name SOTF, felt easier to say than TSOTF. And more importantly, SOTF will not be available at launch. We still intend to do it, but we're putting all our time, resources, energy, sweat, blood into remastering the game and making it look as good as possible. After launch, we'll be tackling remastering SOTF. Without survival of the fittest, will there be a queue? There will not be a queue system at launch. Given that we have intended to implement it with SOTF, we're still weighing up the technicalities of implementing this and whether it'll be worth it for the game. Depends on the direction we take SOTF. But we hear the concerns about queue botting, and we will make sure that it's a server-side configurable that can be disabled, as well as implement measures to prevent this, such as blocking the same connection, hardware, etc. Events, Extra Life, ASA content. Yes, we will still be doing these events. The first ASA event will be Extra Life, bonus rates, and all that jazz. And then we'll be doing our first content-related event in December with the launch of Winter Wonderland. And just as mentioned above, ASA has its own content roadmap, but it's too soon to talk about that. Creature submission, what's the plan? Honestly, it's taken us a really long time to do the Shasta dossier because of the design and tech investigation required to ensure it was a viable creature for us to create without destroying the game. It's a challenge, but we're getting it done. This kind of threw a spanner in our calendar for doing these creature votes. We might take a break because of voter fatigue. Plus, once ASA ships, the meta might establish a need for different types of creatures, and we want to give you some time before the next vote to think about that. Developer Q&As, blogs, vlogs, streams, etc. We've intentionally been very quiet the last year as we've worked aggressively on shipping ASA. Once the game is out the door, we intend to do a 180 and become more directly engaged with the community. We've been reading and monitoring throughout, trust. This could include more Q&As, streams, etc., but the general idea is that our quiet days are ending with the launch of ASA, and then you get to see directly what we're cooking up. Thanks for reading the Q&A, guys. It was really great answering all of your questions. Please check out our new release, ARK Survival Ascended, coming to a virtual video game store near you at the end of October. Okay, so like the last sections, lots of cool stuff here, starting with the character creation overhaul. I like the decision to let people design the characters the way that they want to. The derpy characters have become kind of iconic for ARK, and it would suck if everything looked proper. As far as Gareth Coker doing the music, I'm not too big on video game soundtracks, but I think it's fine. I really enjoyed the music from ARK Survival Evolved, so if he's doing it, I completely trust him. The Unreal 5.2 to 5.3, I don't really think that matters. These next two sections matter a ton though. Not showing us anything about the game until it's close to launch is pretty risky in my opinion. That is not how you market a product, but I think they're pretty confident that we're all going to buy it because we're all pretty addicted to this game, and that's true for me. I don't know if that's true for you. But the next part, what about cheaters? They say that they're doing a bounty program so you can make money for reporting hackers, but I don't really see how that's going to work if they're the ones hacking themselves. I know Wildcard is at the mercy of Snail Games. I'm not going to get into that because that is way too big for this video, but you can just look that up if you want to learn more about that. But cheaters really do need to be stopped. They completely ruined ARK Survival Evolved. I cannot play on the official servers anymore, and it was just frustrating that you had to deal with servers being DOS, people stealing stuff, duplicating items, and aimbot. It was a complete mess, and the cheats got kind of crazy at the end, and people just learned to live with it because of how bad it got, but that cannot be ASA. The game will not survive another 10 years of cheating. As far as Survival of the Fittest goes, I'm not really sure if they have big plans for it. The only thing they had to say about it is that they're removing the word "the" from the title, so it seems like it's taken a backseat for now. SOTF was pretty cool in my opinion when it first dropped. I liked playing it when it first came out on Steam, but the game mode definitely died, and it did make a revival at the end on Xbox, but after that it was already too late. So it might be cool. I don't know what kind of plans they have for it, but SOTF is SOTF, so we'll see when it comes out. And the events extra life stuff is definitely a great decision. Some of the coolest things in ARK are the different cosmetics that they have from the events. I know Studio Wildcard was kind of scummy at the end and they lost the trust of a lot of players, But you do have to respect the fact that they're one of the only gaming studios that doesn't have in-game purchases, and they don't gatekeep the cosmetics to the players who aren't able to afford them. So the event's coming back is definitely a great decision. Extra Life is cool as well. It's a lifesaver for anybody who plays on the official Linux servers. I know it was definitely one of my favorite weekends when I did. Okay, so with all that being out of the way, that is all the information we have about ARK Survival Ascended at this time. There's a lot of stuff to think about here, and there's a couple questions that I want to ask you. The first one is going to be about the cheaters. Do we really trust that Studio Wildcard is going to change after 8 years of completely ignoring the cheating problem? I don't think so. I'm hopeful, but we have to be realistic here. This is the same company that we've been working with for a long time. They have earned our trust in some areas. They're really cool with a lot of things, and sometimes they just completely drop the ball. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm really hoping that they find a way to get rid of the cheating. I like to look at other communities like Rust and DayZ and notice how they all have these communities that really love the game and support everything the developers do. And with ARK, it kind of feels like the developer and player relationship is really poor. So I hope that they're able to improve on that in the next game, but it really is up to time to tell. We don't know how that's going to end up. The second question that I have for you guys, does all this new content justify the $39.99 price point? I'm glad that they're not charging the full $60, and at first I was a little upset that they're making us pay for the same game, but I'm going to go ahead and actually say that it does. To me, it feels like the resources required to develop a game like ARK Survival Evolved in a new engine, even though they already have all the models and they already know what direction they're going, they don't have to design new content, just remaster the old content. It still seems like a lot of work, and they haven't had any money brought in since Genesis Part 2 if you think about it, because they really do release those free maps. I know they come from the community, but still, ARK has been pretty generous with content. It just feels like getting this for free would be way too much to ask for, and they are a business at the end of the day. They do have to make money, so $39.99 seems pretty reasonable for me. And honestly, if ARK 2 is the story game that I think it's going to be, then I might not even buy ARK 2. I might just buy ARK Survival Ascended. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you guys was, do you think that it was the right decision to completely bar players from playing ARK Survival Evolved again on official servers in favor of having everybody purchase ARK 2? I'm not sure how this works from a business standpoint, because I do see a lot of games that still have servers running after 10 or 20 years, but a part of me feels like they might actually be using the same servers from ASC to ASA, and they just took them down this month to prep them for the new release. If this is the case, then I think it's completely justified. Otherwise, I don't really see why they would do this. I also feel like it was time to let ARK Survival Evolved go. It had a really good run, and honestly, might be one of the greatest games of all time. The only game that comes close to rivaling it is Rust. There's an argument to be made for both games on which is the greatest survival game of all time, but that is up to personal preference. I'm not here to argue that in this video. Regardless, I think the cult following that this game has speaks volumes to its success, and whether you had a good or bad experience playing it, this game has a special place in the hearts of millions of people. Most of the people that I knew when this game first came out were kids, and many of them had moved on to college or have had kids. It just shows how long this game's been around for and how much people care about it. But really, that's all the information that I have about ARK 2. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've never done an informational video before, but I did spend a lot of time trying to compile all the resources into one video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am going to be making a series on ARK 2 when it comes out, so if you guys aren't sure whether you want to buy it or not, just feel free to check out my channel. It's going to be PvP, of course, so you can see through my eyes whether it's something you're interested or not. Regardless, hope you guys have an amazing day.